last year that he said included Republican ideas, and then noted that Republicans voted against it. Could I get your reaction to what he was saying in terms of how cooperative or how willing Republicans have been to?
Listen, I've been involved in many bipartisan bills, and bipartisanship doesn't come at the end of the process. It doesn't come along in the middle. It isn't about taking one little Republican idea and throwing it in a 2,000-page bill and saying it's bipartisan. You all saw me sit down with Senator Ted Kennedy and Congressman George Miller, two individuals who I have great respect for, but obviously we have very different philosophies. And we started from the beginning to reauthorize the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Now, you saw me sit down with Senator Max Baucus and Congressman Rob Andrews to do pension reform. But we did it from the beginning. And so if you're really serious about building a bipartisan product that you can bring through the legislative process, you have to do it at the beginning. And I've been there, I've done it. And we can do it again.
Later, as he did today, the last couple of days, the president has accepted responsibility, he says, for not putting the health care negotiations on C-SPAN. Talk can be cheap sometimes, though. What would you see as a concrete example of this bipartisanship that the president talked about today? Could you give us an example of one thing you would like to see him do moving forward that would really beef up the words that we heard?
Well, I think what's pretty clear is that the kind of transparency that the president promised during his campaign did not exist over this last year. And it's also pretty clear that the American people are expecting much more transparency from this political process than they've seen. And so it's going to be incumbent upon the majority in Congress and upon the administration to be more open and upfront about how these bills are being put together and who are the people calling the shots. And so to the extent that there are any provisions about bringing more transparency to the process, I think it's what the American people expect. Thank you.
Well, you heard from House Minority Leader John Boehner, as well as Congressman Mike Pence and Eric Cantor, the House Minority Whip. I want to bring back in Karl Rove. That was the Republican response, by the way, to the Q&A session the president held with Republican House members. Karl, it seems like they all came kind of with the same thing. Like, there are things we can agree on, and we just need to sit down and agree.
Sure. Well, I thought Boehner had an interesting point, which was let's try and find the things that we can agree on and move them. Like, for example, offshore oil drilling, as Congressman Cantor pointed out, seemed to be something the president was in favor of. Well, why don't we find a way to work together with that, the Republicans said. Nuclear power was another thing. Why don't we find a way to work with that? These would be, the old parlance of Henry Kissinger, confidence-building measures. If the administration literally sat down and said, look, we're not going to get a 2,000-page bill, but let's go write a 50-page bill that does this thing and see if we can't find Republicans and Democrats coming together on it. It might build confidence for these bigger things.
Yeah, but